Chapter 1. New Year, New Resolutions. Nancy Redmond woke up to the sound of a kazoo. Not the cheerful kind you'd expect at a parade, but the tortured squeal of plastic being gnawed by a toddler who had clearly mistaken it for a snack. She blinked at the ceiling, wondering if this was the universe's way of saying, "Happy New Year, Nancy. You're still in the trenches." "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." Her 4-year-old, Ellie, bounced onto the bed like a caffeinated kangaroo. "Daddy says we can have pancakes if you say yes." Nancy groaned and sat up, hair sticking out like a crime scene. "Tell Daddy yes. Tell Daddy yes twice. Tell Daddy yes forever." Ellie zipped out of the room, leaving Nancy to take stock of her life. 36 years old, married to a man who still made her laugh, 2 kids under 5, and, oh yes, a private detective agency that currently lived in the corner of her dining room like an awkward houseguest. She loved it, though. Loved the thrill of solving puzzles, even if most of those puzzles involved catching someone's husband in yoga pants at a motel. She swung her legs out of bed and padded to the bathroom, brushing her teeth while scrolling through her phone. 3 new emails from clients. 2 suspected affairs, 1 mysterious neighbor inquiry. She sighed. Infidelity was the bread and butter of Redmond investigations, and sadly, the butter was always rancid. Nancy didn't mind. She told herself she was giving people peace of mind, even if that peace came with heartbreak. And she never let it touch her own life. Her marriage was solid, her kids were healthy, and her biggest scandal was hiding chocolate in the laundry room. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes greeted her like an old friend. Her husband, Tom, stood at the stove wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt that read "World's Okayest Dad." He grinned when he saw her. "Morning, detective," he said, flipping a pancake with unnecessary flair. "Any big cases today? Jewel heist? International espionage? 3 cheating spouses and a nosy neighbor," Nancy said, pouring coffee. "So basically, the usual." Tom kissed her cheek, warm and easy. "You're like the superhero of suburban heartbreak." Nancy laughed, but her mind wandered as she sipped her coffee. She thought about her mother's words. The measure of a woman isn't finding the man you want, it's keeping the man you want. She had kept Tom. They were good. Almost too good. Sometimes that perfection made her feel guilty, like she'd won the lottery while someone else was eating scratch-off dust. Someone like Mike. Her younger brother had skipped the New Year's brunch yesterday. "Work stuff," he texted, which was Mike speak for "I'd rather sit alone than make small talk." Nancy knew him too well. He wasn't antisocial. He wasn't shy. He was flat, like a picture of himself, smiling at the right times, laughing at the jokes, but hollow underneath. She stirred her coffee, watching the swirl of cream. Mike was 33, single, and living like a ghost in his own life. And because the eternal laws of big sisterdom demanded intervention, Nancy decided right then, between pancakes and kazoo remnants, that she was going to fix him. "Tom," she said, leaning against the counter. "Do you think Mike's okay?" Tom shrugged. "He's fine. He's always been quiet. Quiet is one thing. I don't know. He's like a screensaver. Pretty, but nothing moves." Tom chuckled. "You're overthinking." Nancy narrowed her eyes. "I'm a detective. Overthinking is my cardio." Ellie barreled back into the kitchen, kazoo still in her mouth. "Mommy, can we make a vision board today? Teacher says vision boards make dreams come true." Nancy smiled. "Sure, sweetie." 2 hours later, Nancy sat at the dining table surrounded by glitter, glue sticks, and magazine clippings. Ellie was happily pasting pictures of unicorns and rainbows. Nancy, on the other hand, stared at a blank poster board, wondering what her vision was. More clients? More money? A vacation that didn't involve someone peeing in a car seat? Her phone buzzed. A text from Mike. "Happy New Year. Hope the kids didn't eat the tree." Nancy stared at the message, her detective brain firing up. Short, polite, safe, like every message he sent. She typed back, "Happy New Year. Missed you yesterday. Everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, "Yeah, just busy." Nancy set the phone down and looked at her vision board. She grabbed a marker and wrote in bold letters, "Operation Fix Mike." Ellie peered over. "Mommy, what's that?" Nancy smiled. "A mystery, kiddo. The best kind." Chapter 2. The Perfect Life, almost. Nancy Redmond had a theory. Perfection was suspicious. Not in the crime scene chalk outline way, but in the too good to be true, waiting for the other shoe to drop way. And her life? It was dangerously close to perfect. She sat on the couch that afternoon, sipping tea while her youngest, Max, napped upstairs. Ellie was in the playroom, narrating an elaborate drama involving a unicorn, a pirate, and a very confused Barbie. The house hummed with domestic peace, the kind that made Nancy feel like she should apologize to the universe for hogging all the good luck. Tom walked in from the garage, carrying a box of Christmas decorations. His hair was tousled, his smile easy, and his t-shirt now read "Grill Sergeant." He dropped the box and flopped next to her. "Operation to Christmas complete," he announced. "The tree is officially in witness protection." Nancy smirked. "Good. I was starting to feel judged by the ornaments. Tom stretched, his arm brushing hers. So, Detective Redmond, what's on the case docket today? Nancy opened her laptop and angled it toward him. 3 new clients. 2 suspected affairs. 1 my neighbor is acting weird. Tom raised an eyebrow. Define weird. Apparently, he waters his lawn at midnight and talks to his mailbox. Tom grinned. Maybe the mailbox is lonely. Nancy laughed, but her mind wandered. She loved this. Loved the banter, the warmth, the way Tom still looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. Her mother's words echoed again. The measure of a woman isn't finding the man you want. It's keeping the man you want. Nancy had kept him. They were solid. Almost too solid. She closed the laptop and leaned back. Do you ever feel like we're boring? Tom blinked. Boring? We have 2 kids under 5. We're living in a circus. I mean us, Nancy said. Like as a couple. Tom tilted his head. You want drama? I can start leaving mysterious lipstick on my collar. Nancy snorted. Please. The only lipstick you'd find is Ellie's glitter glue. He chuckled and kissed her temple. We're good, Nance. That's not boring. That's rare. Nancy smiled, but the guilt lingered. Rare was good. Rare was precious. But rare also made her think of Mike, her brother, sitting alone in his apartment, eating takeout in silence. She pictured him at the family dinner last month, smiling at all the right times, laughing at the jokes, but hollow underneath. Like a screensaver, she grabbed her phone and scrolled through old photos. There was Mike at Ellie's birthday party, holding a balloon like it was a foreign object. Mike at Thanksgiving, carving turkey with the precision of a surgeon but none of the joy. Mike at Christmas, standing in the background like a decorative plant. Nancy sighed. Tom, do you ever worry about Mike? Tom shrugged. He's fine. He's always been quiet. Quiet is one thing. He's flat. Tom gave her a look. Flat. Like a picture of himself, Nancy said. Smiling, but nothing moves. Tom chuckled. You're overthinking. Nancy narrowed her eyes. I'm a detective. Overthinking is my cardio. Tom laughed and stood. Well, detective, maybe your next big case is Operation Mike. Nancy froze. Operation Mike. The words hit her like a spark. She grinned slowly. You know what? That's not a bad idea. Tom groaned. Oh no, I've created a monster. Nancy ignored him, already pulling out a notebook. She wrote in bold letters, Operation Fix Mike. Underneath, she started a list. 1. Surveillance, non-creepy, mostly. 2. Social media sweep. 3. Background check because why not? 4. Find out what's wrong. 5. Fix it. Ellie wandered in, glitter on her cheeks. Mommy, what are you doing? Nancy smiled. Planning a mystery, kiddo. Ellie gasped. Can I help? Nancy winked. Maybe later. For now, keep the unicorn alive. Ellie saluted and ran off, leaving Nancy to stare at her list. She felt the old thrill, the same spark she'd felt at 6 years old in the public library, reading her first Nancy Drew book while Mike narrated robot battles beside her. Back then, mysteries were about missing clocks and secret staircases. Now, the mystery was her brother's heart, and Nancy Redmond was going to solve it. Chapter 3. The Mike Mystery. Nancy Redmond believed in lists. Grocery lists, to-do lists, even lists of lists. But today, her list was different. It was written in bold ink across the top of her detective notebook. Operation Fix Mike. Underneath, 5 bullet points stared back at her like tiny soldiers ready for battle. 1. Surveillance, non-creepy, mostly. 2. Social media sweep. 3. Background check because why not? 4. Find out what's wrong. 5. Fix it. Nancy tapped her pen against the page, feeling the old thrill of a case. Except this wasn't about catching a cheating spouse or finding a missing cat. This was about her brother, the man who used to make robot sound effects in the library and now looked like a screensaver with a pulse. She glanced at her phone. Mike had posted nothing new on social media since last summer? A blurry photo of a sunset with the caption, "Nice view. Riveting." His profile was a digital desert. No likes, no comments, no signs of life. Nancy frowned. Okay. Step 2. Social media sweep, complete and depressing. Ellie wandered in wearing a tiara and holding a stuffed unicorn like a hostage. Mommy, why are you making your detective face? Nancy smiled. Because I'm working on a mystery. Ellie gasped. Is it about the unicorn? Nope. It's about Uncle Mike. Ellie tilted her head. Is he lost? Nancy hesitated. Sort of. Ellie nodded solemnly. You should check under the couch. That's where my socks go. Nancy laughed and kissed her daughter's forehead. Thanks, kiddo. I'll keep that in mind. When Ellie skipped away, Nancy opened her laptop and pulled up Mike's work website. His photo stared back at her. Professional, polite, painfully neutral. She clicked through the staff bios, hoping for clues. Nothing. Just a list of projects and achievements that sounded impressive but screamed, I have no hobbies. Nancy leaned back and sighed. Okay, time for step 1. Surveillance. That night, after the kids were in bed and Tom was absorbed in a documentary about ancient plumbing. Don't ask. Nancy packed her stakeout kit, granola bars, coffee in a thermos, and her trusty camera. She slipped on yoga pants and a hoodie, because nothing says undercover like looking like every other exhausted mom in the suburbs. Tom glanced up as she grabbed her keys. Where are you going? Nancy smiled sweetly. Out. Out where? Just out. Tom narrowed his eyes. You're not stalking your brother, are you? Nancy gasped. Stalking? Please. I prefer the term strategic observation. Tom shook his head, amused. You're unbelievable. Nancy winked. That's why you married me. Nancy parked her minivan across from Mike's apartment complex, feeling equal parts detective and lunatic. She sipped her coffee and watched the building like it held state secrets. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. Nothing. Mike's lights were on, but no movement. No visitors. No suspicious activity, unless you counted the guy walking his cat on a leash. Nancy texted her best friend, Jenna, on a stakeout. Watching Mike's apartment. Jenna replied instantly, you're insane. Send pics. Nancy snapped a photo of the building and sent it. Jenna's next text. Looks thrilling. Any action? Nancy typed. If by action you mean a man with a cat named Princess, then yes. Jenna, you need a hobby. Nancy smirked. This is my hobby. Hours later, Mike's lights went off. No guests. No late-night adventures. Just nothing. Nancy felt a pang of sadness. His life was a loop. Work, home, sleep, repeat. It was like he was already dead and waiting for the coroner. She started the van and drove home, her mind buzzing. Tomorrow she'd dig deeper, because something was wrong. And Nancy Redmond didn't ignore mysteries, especially when they wore her brother's face. Chapter 4. Stakeout in yoga pants. Nancy Redmond had always imagined detective work as glamorous. Sleek cars, trench coats, maybe a dramatic chase through foggy streets. Reality was sitting in a minivan at 9:47 p.m., wearing yoga pants and clutching a thermos like it was a life raft. She adjusted her seat and peered through the windshield at Mike's apartment building. The blinds were drawn, the lights dim. The only excitement so far had been a man walking a cat named Princess, who had stared at Nancy like she was the neighborhood creep, which technically she was. Nancy sighed and opened her notebook. Operation Fix Mike stared back at her in bold letters, mocking her with its optimism. She had expected something. A visitor. A phone call. A sign that Mike's life wasn't a barren wasteland of spreadsheets and reheated leftovers. But so far, the most suspicious thing about him was his ability to make nothing happen for hours. Her phone buzzed. Jenna. Her best friend and unofficial partner in crime. Jenna. Still stalking your brother? Nancy smirked and typed back. Strategic observation. And yes, Jenna, you're insane. Send me a pic of your detective outfit. Nancy angled her phone for a selfie. Messy bun, hoodie, yoga pants, and the kind of under-eye circles that screamed, I've seen things. She sent it. Jenna, wow. Carmen Sandiego could never. Nancy chuckled and set the phone down. She took a sip of coffee and scanned the parking lot. A car pulled in, a silver sedan. Nancy perked up, heart thudding like she just spotted Bigfoot. The driver got out. A woman. Tall, stylish, carrying a tote bag. Nancy's detective senses tingled. Please be going to Mike's, she whispered. The woman walked toward the building. Nancy leaned forward, practically pressing her nose to the glass. The woman entered through the main door. Nancy waited. 1 minute. 2. 3. No lights flicked on in Mike's apartment. Nancy groaned. Probably visiting someone normal. She slumped back and stared at the dashboard clock. 10:12 p.m. Her stakeout snacks were gone. Her coffee was lukewarm, and her bladder was staging a protest. She considered calling it a night, until she saw movement. Mike's blinds shifted. A shadow crossed the window. Nancy sat up so fast she hit her head on the steering wheel. Ow! Okay, action. She grabbed her camera and zoomed in. Mike appeared, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, holding a bowl of cereal. At 10:15 p.m. Nancy blinked. Seriously? That's your big move? Midnight Cheerios? She snapped a photo anyway, because documentation was key, and muttered, You're killing me, Mike. On the drive home, Nancy's thoughts spiraled like a corkscrew. Mike wasn't just single. He was stuck. No friends dropping by. No hobbies. No spark. It was like he'd built a fortress around himself and thrown away the key. Nancy gripped the steering wheel. Well, guess what, little brother? I'm picking that lock. She imagined the conversation. Mike, why are you stalking me? Nancy, because I love you. Mike, that's not comforting. Nancy, it's supposed to be. She laughed out loud, startling herself. Maybe Jenna was right. Maybe she was insane. But Nancy didn't care. She had cracked cases with less to go on. And tomorrow she was going deeper. Back home, Tom was still watching his documentary, blissfully unaware that his wife was plotting a full-scale intervention. Hey, he said as she walked in. How was wherever you went? Nancy kissed his cheek. Productive. Tom gave her a look. You didn't break any laws, did you? Nancy grinned. Define laws. Tom groaned. I'm afraid to ask. Nancy winked and headed upstairs, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Social media sweep? Done. Stakeout? Done. Next step, confrontation. Because if Mike thought he could hide behind cereal and sweatpants forever, he had another thing coming. Nancy Redmond was on the case. And when Nancy was on a case, the universe had two options: cooperate or get steamrolled. Chapter 5. The confrontation. Nancy Redmond had never been good at waiting. Patience was for saints and people who enjoyed knitting. Nancy was neither. So after 2 nights of stakeouts, 3 cups of detective-grade coffee, and 1 existential crisis about her snack choices, she decided enough was enough. It was time to confront Mike. She drove to his apartment on Saturday morning, armed with muffins, because carbs soften blows, and the kind of determination that could bend steel. Her plan was simple: knock, smile, and bulldoze her way into answers. Mike opened the door wearing sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt. His hair was damp, his expression neutral, like he'd been expecting a package, not a sister on a mission. "Nance," he said slowly, "what are you doing here?" Nancy held up the muffin box like a peace treaty. "Breakfast diplomacy." Mike blinked. "You drove across town for muffins?" Nancy breezed past him into the apartment. "And for you." Mike sighed and closed the door. "This feels ominous." Nancy scanned the living room. Neat, minimal. A couch, a coffee table, a TV. No signs of life beyond the basics. It was like a showroom for introverts. She plopped onto the couch and patted the seat beside her. "Sit. We need to talk." Mike hesitated. "About what?" Nancy gave him her detective stare, the one that made cheating spouses confess before she even asked a question. "About you." Mike sat, arms crossed. "I'm fine." Nancy snorted. "You're about as fine as a flat tire." Mike frowned. "That's not a thing." "It is now," Nancy said. "You skipped New Year's brunch. You barely text. You live like a monk without the chanting. What's going on?" Mike shrugged. "Nothing." Nancy narrowed her eyes. "Mike, I've been your sister for 33 years. I know when you're lying." Mike smirked. "You also thought Dad was hiding treasure in the garage." Nancy waved a hand. "Irrelevant. Spill." Mike leaned back. "Why do you care so much?" Nancy stared at him, her voice softening. "Because you're my brother. And you look lonely." Mike's jaw tightened. "I'm not lonely." Nancy tilted her head. "Then why do you live like you're allergic to joy?" Mike chuckled dryly. "Wow. Subtle." Nancy grinned. "Subtlety is for amateurs." When Mike tried to stand, Nancy sprang into action. She grabbed his arm, twisted, and locked him in a gentle but firm headlock, a move perfected during their teenage years. "Seriously," Mike groaned. "You're 36. And still stronger than you," Nancy said, tightening her grip. "Talk." Mike laughed despite himself. "You're insane." Nancy smiled. "And you're stalling." Finally, Mike sighed, the kind of sigh that carried years of weight. Nancy loosened her hold and sat back, watching him like a hawk. "In college," he began slowly, "I met a girl. We hung out. I liked her. Then one day she disappeared. Stopped answering texts. I figured she moved on. No big deal." Nancy nodded, waiting. "A month later," Mike continued, "I was in the dean's office. Someone accused me of stalking her, threatening her, said I was dangerous." Nancy's stomach dropped. "What? That's insane." Mike shrugged. "Anonymous report. Took 2 months to clear my name. But by then, the damage was done. Rumors spread. People looked at me like I was creepy." Nancy felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. "Mike, that's awful." He gave a bitter smile. "It followed me. Even at work. Someone found out, told others. Most didn't believe it, but you can see it in their eyes, the doubt. So I figured the safest way to live was to stay quiet. Stay small." Nancy's throat tightened. She wanted to hug him, shake him, scream at the universe for being so unfair. Instead, she reached for his hand. "Mike," she said softly, "you're not creepy. You're kind. You're smart. You're you." Mike looked away. "Doesn't matter. People remember stories, not facts." Nancy squeezed his hand. "Then we'll change the story." Mike chuckled. "We." Nancy grinned, eyes blazing with determination. "Oh, you sweet summer child. You think I'm letting you rot in this apartment?" "No. Operation Fix Mike is officially in play." Mike groaned. "That sounds terrifying." Nancy stood, victorious. "It should." Chapter 6. The College Ghost. Nancy Redmond had solved dozens of cases. Cheating spouses, missing pets, even one bizarre incident involving a stolen garden gnome. But nothing had prepared her for this. Sitting across from her brother in his quiet apartment, listening to a story that sounded like a bad campus horror tale, Nancy felt her detective instincts collide with something bigger: rage. Mike leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling like the words were carved there. "It started my first year," he said, voice flat but steady. "I met this girl, Anna. She was nice. We were both new, so we hung out. Grabbed coffee, walked around campus. Nothing serious." Nancy nodded, her pen poised over her notebook even though she wasn't sure why she was taking notes. Habit, maybe. Or maybe because this felt like a case with stakes she couldn't ignore. Then one day, Mike continued, she just stopped coming by. No texts, no calls. Figured she was busy. People drift. No big deal. Nancy tilted her head. Did you try reaching out? Mike gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, couple of times. Nothing dramatic. Just, hey, hope you're okay. Call me if you need to talk. The kind of message you could send to your grandma without getting arrested. Nancy smiled faintly. Sounds reasonable. Mike shrugged. A week passed. Still nothing. Then I hear from someone on campus. She's hanging out with another guy. Fine. Whatever. I let it go. Nancy frowned. So where does the nightmare start? Mike's jaw tightened. A month later, I get called into the dean's office. Someone accused me of stalking her, threatening her, said I was dangerous. Nancy's stomach dropped. What? That's insane. Mike nodded slowly. Anonymous report. No proof. But they had to investigate. Meetings. Interviews. 2 months of hell. Finally, they cleared me. No evidence. But by then, he trailed off, eyes dark. By then, the damage was done. Nancy felt her pulse spike. Rumors. Mike gave a bitter smile. College runs on rumors. I was that guy. The creepy stalker who got away with it. People avoided me, whispered, laughed, and it didn't stop after graduation. Nancy leaned forward. You mean, someone at work found out, Mike said. Told others. Most didn't believe it, but you can see it, the doubt in their eyes. So I figured the safest way to live was to stay quiet. Stay small. Don't give anyone a reason to look at me twice. Nancy stared at him, her heart aching. She remembered the boy who used to narrate robot battles in the library, who laughed so hard he snorted during family game nights. That boy was gone, buried under years of suspicion and silence. She reached for his hand. Mike, you didn't deserve that. He shrugged. Doesn't matter. People remember stories, not facts. Nancy squeezed his hand, her voice fierce. Then we'll change the story. Mike chuckled softly. We. Nancy's eyes blazed with determination. Oh, you sweet summer child. You think I'm letting you rot in this apartment? No. Operation Fix Mike is officially in play. Mike groaned. That sounds terrifying. Nancy grinned. It should. Driving home later, Nancy's thoughts churned like a storm. She'd expected loneliness, maybe heartbreak. But this was a scar. A deep, ugly wound carved by lies and left to fester. No wonder Mike lived like a ghost. He wasn't just avoiding people. He was avoiding judgment. Nancy gripped the steering wheel. Well, guess what, little brother? I'm rewriting your narrative. She imagined the headline. Local detective saves brother from eternal bachelorhood. Okay, maybe not that dramatic, but she was going to fix this, even if it killed her, or at least ruined her manicure. Back home, Tom was folding laundry like a domestic superhero. He looked up as Nancy walked in, eyes sharp. You have that look, he said. What look? The I'm about to do something reckless look. Nancy kissed his cheek. Reckless is relative. Tom sighed. Should I be worried? Nancy smiled sweetly. Only if you hate happy endings. Tom groaned. I'm afraid to ask. Nancy winked and headed upstairs, her mind already spinning with plans. Dating apps, blind dates, social media sleuthing, whatever it took. Because Nancy Redmond didn't just solve mysteries. She solved lives. And Mike's life was about to get a rewrite. Chapter 7. Matchmaker Mayhem. Nancy Redmond had never been afraid of a challenge. She once tracked down a cheating husband using nothing but a blurry photo of his elbow and a Yelp review. So when she vowed to fix Mike's love life, she approached it with the same confidence and the same level of caffeine. Her first step? Dating apps. Nancy sat at her dining table, laptop open, kids occupied with Play-Doh, and Tom pretending not to notice the storm brewing. She created a profile for Mike. Tasteful, honest, and sprinkled with charm. Username. Honest Mike 33 bio. Quiet guy who loves good coffee, bad puns, and meaningful conversations. Photos. 1 professional headshot. 1 candid smile. Nancy had to dig through old family albums for that. And 1 picture of him hiking, because apparently, everyone on dating apps hikes. Nancy hit save and grinned. Perfect. Tom glanced up from his book. You're catfishing your own brother. Nancy waved a hand. I'm matchmaking. Totally different. Tom smirked. Does Mike know? Nancy hesitated. Define know. Tom groaned. You're unbelievable. Nancy winked. That's why you married me. Within an hour, Mike's inbox was buzzing. Nancy scrolled through messages like a talent scout. Okay, she muttered. We've got a yoga instructor, a woman who breeds exotic parrots, and someone named Glitter Queen 87. Promising. She screenshot the profiles and texted Mike. Surprise, you're on a dating app. Don't freak out. Also, Glitter Queen seems nice. Mike called instantly. Nancy, what did you do? Nancy smiled sweetly. You're welcome. Nance, I don't want... Mike, she interrupted. You've been single since flip phones were cool. It's time. He groaned. This is insane. Nancy grinned. Insane is my brand. 2 days later, Nancy convinced Mike to meet one of the matches, a yoga instructor named Bree. Nancy even picked the cafe, claiming it had romantic lighting. Translation: dim enough to hide awkwardness. Nancy sat in her car across the street, watching like a hawk. Mike arrived first, looking painfully uncomfortable in a button-down shirt. Bree walked in 5 minutes later, tall, serene, and radiating Zen energy. Nancy whispered to herself, "Okay, this could work." Then Bree hugged Mike and said loudly, "So excited to meet my new yoga student." Nancy froze. "Student?" Mike's expression screamed, "Kill me now." Nancy texted Jenna, "Abort mission. She thinks he's here for downward dog lessons." Jenna replied, "You're a menace." Nancy slumped in her seat, watching Mike nod politely while Bree launched into a monologue about chakras. The date ended with Bree handing him a flyer for her yoga retreat. Nancy groaned. Well, that was educational. Back home, Nancy paced the kitchen while Tom cooked dinner. "How bad?" Tom asked. Nancy threw up her hands. She thought he was signing up for yoga. "I'm dying." Tom chuckled. "Maybe he needs yoga." Nancy shot him a look. "Not helping." Tom kissed her cheek. "You're trying too hard." Nancy sighed. "I just want him happy." Tom smiled gently. "You can't force happiness, Nance." Nancy knew he was right, but giving up wasn't in her DNA. She was a detective. Detectives didn't quit, they adapted. And Nancy Redmond was about to adapt like a boss. Later that night, as Nancy scrolled through Mike's dating app messages, one caught her eye, a woman named Claire. Simple profile. Smart bio. No glitter, no parrots, no yoga flyers. Nancy grinned. "Hello, Claire." She didn't know it yet, but this message was about to change everything. Chapter 8. Sparks and Surprises. Nancy Redmond had a sixth sense for trouble and for romance. It was the same instinct that told her when a spouse was lying about working late and when a client's alibi smelled like week-old fish. Tonight, that instinct was buzzing like a neon sign. Claire. The name glowed on Mike's dating app like a beacon of hope. Her profile was refreshingly normal. Bio. Book lover, coffee addict, amateur baker. Looking for someone who enjoys good conversation and bad movies. No glitter. No parrots. No yoga flyers. Just real. Nancy grinned. Finally. Convincing Mike to meet Claire was like negotiating with a hostage. He paced his apartment while Nancy sat cross-legged on his couch, eating his pretzels. "I don't know," Mike muttered. "What if she's human?" Nancy interrupted. "She is. I checked." Mike shot her a look. "You checked?" Nancy waved a hand. Background sweep. Totally normal. No criminal record. No cult affiliations. No suspicious Pinterest boards. Mike groaned. "You're terrifying." Nancy smiled sweetly. "And effective." 2 nights later, Nancy parked her minivan across from the cafe because of course she did. Stakeouts were her love language. She adjusted her binoculars. Yes, binoculars, and watched Mike walk in. He looked good. Nervous, but good. Button-down shirt, clean shave, the faint air of a man who'd been bullied into grooming. Claire arrived 5 minutes later. Nancy's first thought, wow. Claire was pretty, but not in the intimidating Instagram filter way. She had warm eyes, a soft smile, and the kind of confidence that didn't need sequins. Nancy grinned. Game on. The date started well. Smiles, laughter, easy conversation. Nancy felt smug enough to text Jenna. "They're vibing." "I'm a genius." Jenna replied, "You're a stalker." Nancy ignored her and kept watching. Then disaster struck. The waiter approached with 2 steaming mugs. "Here's your caramel latte and your oat milk turmeric chai." Nancy froze. Mike hated chai, hated turmeric, hated anything that sounded like a yoga pose. She watched him stare at the mug like it was radioactive. "Drink it," Nancy whispered from her car. "For the love of romance, drink it." Mike took a sip, his face contorted like he'd licked a battery. Claire laughed. "Not your thing." Mike coughed. "It's unique." Nancy slapped her forehead. "Smooth, Romeo." Despite the chai fiasco, the conversation flowed. Claire talked about her love for mystery novels. Mike admitted he liked puzzles. Nancy nearly squealed. Shared interests. This is happening. Then Claire said softly, "You seem thoughtful, like someone who's been through things." Nancy held her breath. Mike hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess I have." Claire smiled. "That's not a bad thing." Nancy melted in her seat. "Oh my God, marry her." Just as Nancy was basking in her matchmaking glory, her phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Please tell me you didn't leave your binoculars visible." Nancy glanced at the dashboard. Binoculars, front and center. She cursed under her breath, then froze as Claire glanced toward the window, toward Nancy's car. Nancy ducked so fast she hit her head on the steering wheel. "Ow." "Okay. Abort mission." She started the engine and peeled out of the parking lot like a getaway driver, praying Claire hadn't seen her. Because nothing says, supportive sister, like lurking in a minivan with surveillance gear. Back home, Nancy paced the kitchen while Tom stirred pasta. "How bad?" Tom asked without looking up. Nancy groaned. I might have been spotted. Tom chuckled. You're unbelievable. Nancy threw up her hands. I just want him happy. Tom kissed her cheek. You can't force happiness, Nance. Nancy sighed. Maybe not, but I can nudge it. Aggressively. Tom laughed. You're going to get arrested. Nancy grinned. Worth it. Later that night, Mike texted. She wants to meet again. Nancy stared at the screen, heart soaring. Then she typed back, You're welcome. Mike replied, Stop meddling. Nancy smiled. Never. Chapter 9. Trouble in Paradise. Nancy Redmond was many things. Wife, mother, detective, occasional snack hoarder. But lately, she was something else. Obsessed. Not with a case, not with a client, but with her brother's love life. And obsession, she was learning, had side effects, like forgetting to defrost chicken for dinner, or leaving laundry in the washer so long it smelled like regret. Or, worst of all, missing Tom's subtle sighs when she spent more time scrolling dating apps than talking to him. It started small. Tom walked into the kitchen one evening, holding a basket of unfolded laundry. Hey, he said, voice casual but tight. Any reason this has been sitting here for 2 days? Nancy looked up from her laptop, where she was deep in a rabbit hole of Claire's Instagram posts. Laundry? Oh, right. I was busy. Tom raised an eyebrow. Busy with what? Nancy hesitated. Research. Tom stared. Research. Nancy smiled sweetly. For Mike. Tom groaned. Nancy. She closed the laptop and stood, wrapping her arms around his waist. Don't be mad. I just want him happy. Tom kissed her forehead, but his voice was quiet. I know, but don't forget about us while you're fixing him. Nancy felt a pang of guilt, sharp and sudden. She loved Tom, loved their life, but lately her focus had shifted like a camera lens zooming too far in. She promised herself she'd do better. Tomorrow, after one more check on Claire's baking blog. The next night, Nancy invited Tom to a romantic dinner. She lit candles, poured wine, and even wore the red dress he liked. It was perfect until her phone buzzed mid-toast. My second date went well. She likes mystery novels. Nancy squealed. Yes. Tom blinked. What? Nancy waved her phone. Claire likes mysteries. This is huge. Tom stared at her, candlelight flickering across his face. Nancy. She froze, guilt crashing over her like a wave. I'm sorry. Tom set down his glass. You're amazing, Nance. But maybe let Mike handle his own life. Nancy swallowed hard. You're right. Tom smiled gently. I married you for your heart, not your surveillance skills. Nancy laughed weakly. Though those are impressive. Tom chuckled. Terrifying, but impressive. Later, lying in bed beside Tom, Nancy stared at the ceiling. Was she projecting? Was her obsession with Mike's happiness really about him? Or about her fear of losing her own spark? Her marriage was solid, her kids were healthy, her life was good, almost too good, and maybe that scared her. She turned to Tom, watching him sleep, his face calm and familiar. She loved him. She didn't want drama, but she wanted something. A reminder that life wasn't just routines and grocery lists. Nancy sighed. Tomorrow, she'd focus on her own happiness. But first, she had to make sure Mike didn't blow it with Claire. Because old habits die hard, and Nancy Redmond was nothing if not persistent. Chapter 10. The big reveal. Nancy Redmond prided herself on being prepared for anything, except for the text that popped up on her phone at 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mike, need to talk. About Claire. Nancy froze mid-sip of coffee. Her detective brain fired up like a siren. Need to talk was never good. It was the verbal equivalent of ominous music in a horror movie. She typed back. What happened? Did she ghost you? Did she hate the chai? Did she? Mike replied, just come over. Nancy stared at the screen, heart pounding. She grabbed her keys, kissed Tom on the cheek, and muttered, Emergency. Tom raised an eyebrow. Is someone dead? Nancy shook her head. Worse. Relationship drama. Tom groaned. You're unbelievable. Nancy winked. That's why you married me. Mike was waiting at his apartment, looking calm. Too calm. Nancy burst in like a SWAT team. What happened? Did she dump you? Did she? Mike held up a hand. Stop. Nancy froze. Okay. Stopping. Mike took a breath. Claire knows. Nancy blinked. Knows what? Mike gave her a look. About you. About the dating app. About the stakeouts. Nancy's stomach dropped. Oh. Mike crossed his arms. She saw you. With binoculars. Nancy slapped her forehead. I knew it. I knew she saw me. Mike sighed. She thought it was weird. Nancy winced. Understandable. Mike smirked. But then she laughed. Nancy blinked. Laughed. Mike nodded. She said it was kind of sweet. That you care that much. Nancy stared. Wait. She's not mad. Mike shook his head. No. She said most people don't have anyone in their corner like that. Nancy felt her chest tighten. Not with panic, but with something warm. Relief. Hope. Maybe even pride. She likes you, Nancy whispered. Mike smiled. Really smiled. the kind of smile she hadn't seen in years. Yeah, she does. Nancy grinned so hard her cheeks hurt. Mike, that's amazing. He chuckled. You're still insane. Nancy waved a hand. Insane is my brand. Driving home, Nancy felt lighter than she had in weeks. Mike was smiling again, laughing, living, and maybe, just maybe, she could stop obsessing. But as she pulled into the driveway, she saw Tom through the kitchen window, stirring pasta with that quiet patience she loved. Her heart squeezed. She'd been so focused on fixing Mike that she'd almost forgotten the man who made her life feel like home. Nancy walked inside, wrapped her arms around Tom, and whispered, "Thank you." Tom blinked. "For what?" "For loving me," Nancy said softly. "Even when I'm me." Tom smiled. "Always." Nancy kissed him, feeling the spark, the one she'd worried was fading, flare back to life. Maybe happiness wasn't about chasing drama or fixing everyone else. Maybe it was about noticing the good you already had. Still, she couldn't resist adding with a grin. "But just so you know, Operation Fix Mike was a success." Tom groaned. "God help us." Chapter 11. Love lessons? Nancy Redmond believed in closure. Not the kind you get from a detective case file stamped solved, but the kind that comes from sitting across from someone you love and saying the things that matter. Tonight, that someone was Mike. They met at their favorite diner, a place with cracked vinyl booths and pancakes the size of hubcaps. Nancy slid into the booth, grinning at her brother like she hadn't just spent the last month orchestrating his romantic resurrection. Mike smirked. "You look smug." Nancy poured sugar into her coffee. "Smug is my resting face." Mike chuckled. "Claire likes you, by the way." Nancy blinked. "She does." Mike nodded. "She said you're intense, but in a good way." Nancy grinned. "I'll take it." For a moment, they ate in comfortable silence. Then Nancy set down her fork and leaned in. "Mike," she said softly, "I need to ask, are you happy?" Mike thought for a long moment. "I think I'm getting there." Nancy smiled. "Good." He met her eyes. "You know, I didn't realize how much I'd let that old stuff define me. The rumors, the looks. I thought staying small was the only way to survive." Nancy reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're not small. You're my brother. You're amazing." Mike smiled faintly. "You sound like Mom." Nancy laughed. "She was right, you know, about everything." Mike tilted his head. "Including the part where she said you'd boss me around forever?" Nancy grinned. "Especially that part." Mike's voice softened. "You taught me something, Nance." Nancy blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "That it's okay to fight for your own story. To not let other people write it for you." Nancy felt her throat tighten. "You taught me something too." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Nancy smiled. "That fixing people isn't the same as loving them. Sometimes you just show up and let them figure it out." Mike chuckled. "So you're retiring from detective work?" Nancy snorted. "Please. I die of boredom." They finished their pancakes, laughing about old memories. Robot battles in the library, headlocks in the hallway. The time Nancy convinced Mike that glitter was edible, it wasn't. For the first time in years, Nancy saw the boy she remembered. The spark, the humor, the life. As they walked out into the cool night air, Mike said quietly, "Thanks, Nance." Nancy smiled. "Always." Driving home, Nancy felt lighter. Mike was okay. More than okay, he was moving forward. And maybe so was she. Because love wasn't about fixing. It was about showing up, paying attention, and remembering that happiness wasn't a mystery to solve. It was a choice. When she walked into the house, Tom was waiting with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one and kissed her forehead. "How's Mike?" he asked. Nancy smiled. "Better. And so am I." Tom grinned. "Good. Because I was starting to worry you'd adopt him." Nancy laughed. "Tempting. But I think Claire's got that covered." Chapter 12. A new chapter. Nancy Redmond woke up to the sound of laughter. Ellie's high-pitched giggle and Max's delighted squeal echoing down the hall. For once, it wasn't chaos. It was joy. And Nancy realized something. Life felt lighter. Operation Fix Mike was officially a success. Her brother was smiling again, texting her updates about Claire that made Nancy grin like a proud parent. But more importantly, Nancy had learned something about herself, something she was determined to put into practice. Balance. Nancy padded into the kitchen, hair in a messy bun, wearing her favorite hoodie. Tom was at the stove, flipping pancakes like a man who had mastered the art of breakfast diplomacy. "Morning, detective," he said with a grin. "Any stakeouts planned?" Nancy laughed. "Retired. For now." Tom raised an eyebrow. "For now." Nancy kissed his cheek. "I'm focusing on my own mysteries." Tom smirked. "Like what?" Nancy grabbed a mug and poured coffee. "Like how to keep the spark alive without turning into a lunatic with binoculars." Tom chuckled. "That's a good start." Later that day, Nancy sat at her desk, the corner of the dining room that doubled as Redmond Investigations HQ. She opened her laptop and stared at her client list. Infidelity cases, suspicious neighbors, the usual suspects. She sighed. Maybe it's time for something new. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she drafted a post for her business page. Redmond Investigations, now offering life mysteries consulting. Because sometimes the hardest case is love. Nancy grinned. It was tongue-in-cheek, but maybe it was what people needed. A detective who could solve more than missing jewelry. Someone who could help untangle the knots of everyday life. She hit post and felt a thrill. A new chapter was starting. Not just for Mike, but for her. Just as Nancy was basking in her entrepreneurial glow, her phone buzzed. A new client inquiry. Subject, urgent message. I think my neighbor is a vampire. He only comes out at night and his recycling bin is full of tomato juice cartons. Nancy stared at the screen, then burst out laughing. Well, she muttered, at least life isn't boring. She grabbed her notebook and wrote, case number 47, the tomato juice vampire. Because balance didn't mean giving up the fun, it meant embracing it. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Nancy curled up on the couch with Tom. He handed her a mug of tea and kissed her temple. You seem happy, he said. Nancy smiled. I am. Tom grinned. So, what's next for Detective Redmond? Nancy sipped her tea, eyes twinkling. New cases, new adventures, and maybe a little less stalking. Tom laughed. I'll believe it when I see it. Nancy leaned against him, feeling the warmth of home, the hum of possibility. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, and that was enough. Chapter 13. Epilogue, The Detective of Hearts. Nancy Redmond had always loved mysteries. The thrill of the unknown, the satisfaction of a solved case. It was her oxygen. But as she sat on her porch on a crisp February morning, sipping coffee while her kids chased bubbles in the yard, she realized something. The greatest mystery wasn't about missing jewelry or cheating spouses. It was about love. Not just romantic love, the messy, unpredictable kind, but all of it. Family, friendship, the quiet, everyday love that made life worth living. And for the first time in weeks, Nancy felt like she'd cracked the code. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Mike, Claire and I are going to that mystery book club you told me about. Thanks for everything, Nance. Nancy grinned so hard her cheeks hurt. She typed back, you're welcome. And remember, no headlocks on the first date. Mike replied with a laughing emoji, and Nancy chuckled. He was smiling again, laughing, living, and that was all she'd wanted. Inside, her laptop pinged with a new client inquiry. She opened the message and laughed out loud. Subject, need help figuring out if my cat is plotting against me. Nancy grabbed her notebook and wrote, case number 48, the feline conspiracy. Because life mysteries weren't going anywhere, and neither was she. She updated her website tagline, Redmond Investigations, solving mysteries big and small, because sometimes the hardest case is the human heart. Nancy sat back, feeling the hum of possibility. She wasn't just a detective anymore. She was a detective of hearts. And honestly, she liked the sound of that. Tom stepped onto the porch, handing her a fresh cup of coffee. What's next, detective? He asked, eyes twinkling. Nancy smiled, leaning into him. Whatever comes. But no more binoculars. Tom laughed. I'll believe that when I see it. Nancy grinned, watching her kids blow bubbles into the winter air, their laughter floating like confetti. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, and that was enough. Still, as her phone buzzed with another inquiry, Nancy couldn't help but whisper to herself, case closed for now.